There we go. All right. Now we're good to go. Yesterday, we started our second week of color. And one of the exciting things that happened is that we looked at that color wheel. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. And I noticed right away that it reminded me of the, okay, we'll pause for 1 second. It reminded me of the paint chips from the hardware store, and that made me very excited from back in the day, and still actually still use them and play with them. Um, and we talked about the idea that we have the hue, the tint, the shade, and the tone. So that's pretty important to us going forward, that we be kind of aware of all the different ways that you can manipulate and alter your hue. And also that tints and lighter values and colors come forward in our vision, while shades and darker colors recede in our vision. So when we looked at op art and op artist Bridget Riley, we noticed that a lot of that was happening in her artwork. So in particular, one of the things that I really liked, um, for example, in this piece, which I just find so groovy, she's got all of those things going. Oh, I forgot the third one, optical mixing. Those are the three things that we covered yesterday. So if you look at this piece right here, which to me is like, it's just so groovy. Groovy is a perfect word since it was painted in like the 60s or 70s too, I think. She's doing it all. She has, first of all, the thick and the thin of the lines. So one of the things that we talked about was spacing, and how negative space, which is that like the white area, maybe between lines and shapes, you can control how value reads, and how much white space there is there for us to like perceive a break. So she's taking her lines and she's manipulating them by making them grow fat and thin. The white areas where the thickest amount of light or white space looks wide and looks like it's coming at us, versus the areas that are thin looks like it's skinny or twisting. That's all adding to that illusion of space. Then she's got some values that are lighter or darker. Those are also doing that forward and back. And then lastly, I don't know, how you guys feel when you look at this, but I do experience some optical mixing, color mixing, like certain colors that are close to each other start to kind of rub against each other and mix. And part of that is due to their values. If some colors are close in value, then they start to contrast, or due to their positions on the color wheel, if they are close to each other, they start to contrast, or they start to kind of blend. So that's where we're going to pick up today, is what happens when colors are close to each other on the color wheel versus not close to each other on the color wheel. And that's where we're going to pick up today with our new artist. So looking at the color wheel again, this one's I have it a little bit smaller in my wheel, but I think it's okay. There are definite relationships in our color wheel. And we're going to get a lot into color schemes next week. Color schemes and color theory is the whole sort of relationships that we can analyze and use based on where colors sit on this color wheel. But we can kind of look at like simplistic relationships right now and use that this week. So take a look at yellow. Yellow, and I'm only picking yellow really because it's at the top today. Okay, so yellow is sitting there all pretty, and it's a very bright kind of, come forward sort of color. And I'm going to use some like antiquated kind of symbols. So like from the 60s, like if we, as if we were op artists. So in the old days, we used to, you know, talk about neighborhoods and, you know, like they used to have block parties all the time, and you really identified with your neighborhood back in the day. At least that's how my dad tells it. So you, here's yellow, and yellow hangs out with yellow orange and yellow green. Sometimes orange, you know, like yellow might hang out with yellow orange and even red orange, because they're all kind of related. Like that'd be another way of saying it. They're cousins, they're neighbors, they hang out, they get along well together, they kind of mix, because yellow is part of yellow orange. It's also part of yellow green. It's even part of green. So they have this like relationship. They get each other, they know each other, they're part of each other. We don't need to go too deep with any of that, okay? So they look good next to each other. So when they're in a painting or artwork or anything like of that sort, they kind of are going to look like harmonious, right? That makes sense, I hope. So then if you look, if you're yellow and you're standing there and you're, you know, looking out your window or whatever, and you look, this is old terminology, across the tracks to the other side of town, you see purple or violet, and maybe blue violet and red violet, and they're like the other clan or the other folks or the other group or the other family. This is just symbolic, okay? So that group has their own thing going, but yellow is not a part of it. There is no yellow in violet, okay? So you can see how we could set up a thing to have colors be contrasting because they are at such odds. And that is simple and plain to see when you have colors across the circle from each other. So that relationship holds steady, not just for yellow, but like for red, it's the green across. Those are complements. I know you've heard that term before, complementary colors. Complementary colors, that sounds like that means they would go together, but it really means that they're contrasting. And that contrast is heightened the closer in value that they are. Okay, so like when you put red and green next to each other and they are close in value as well, it's like fist fights are out, okay? Yellow and violet are hardly ever the same value because yellow is so much lighter, but they still have good contrast. All right, so what does that mean to us? Well, here is an artist, and there are many. This is just one that I happen to find and really like. This artist, Amanda Hone, who's a contemporary artist, she's English also, utilizes tints and shades to create the forward and back movement, kind of just like Bridget Riley. But she also utilizes contrast or lack of to make areas either fight with each other or blend really nicely. And I have just here a spattering of examples, but we're going to look into some more. So she is largely an abstract painter, which means she's usually not painting pictures of things, just like op artist. She's not usually painting portraits and stuff like that. She is pretty much mainly about color. So looking at these examples here right on the slide, you can see that she's very interested in how tints and shades propel colors forward or back, how certain colors look and behave next to one another. And that's a lot what her artwork is about. This is her website. She is kind of interesting. She's a little sassy, which I like. This is like her biography. She was raised in Scotland and lives in North Wales now. She says she's entirely self-taught. Her work is characterized by bold use of color and striking abstract imagery. And she goes on to mention a couple artists that I've never heard of that she was influenced by. They must be European. And then she's also influenced by Picasso, which when I show you some of those works, I think you'll see it too. I am deeply passionate about color and form and strive to combine these elements in my paintings, creating work that impacts on the eye with force. Often humorous and offbeat, my art clearly shows my great enthusiasm for creation and my optimistic outlook on life. So if we go over here to the gallery, I find it really interesting. She's got all these little sections of kind of like theme galleries. And even the titles of these little galleries, I find pretty interesting. So she's got this section called loose abstracts versus tight abstracts. So these loose abstracts, I was taught that this type of style of painting is, it's referred to as painterly, which means like you can see the brush strokes and it's kind of blended on the canvas, which is a popular style like Impressionists and stuff, like even Van Gogh. They weren't mixing color on their palette and then applying it very flat. It's mixing on the canvas, kind of like this tight abstracts, which is right next to it. And it's got a pretty heavy outline versus the other one that doesn't. And then look at this one, intuitive abstracts. I'm not really sure what she means by that. I'd have to read about it, but you can see that it's strikingly different than those other ones. And then this one, unconfined abstracts. That one has barely an outline. This one here, heads, that reminds me a lot of Picasso. You can see the Picasso influence there. So there's a lot of really interesting things. So here you can see, remember I said that she's largely like totally abstract. She does have some figurative work. Figurative means there's something recognizable that you could name in the artwork, like a chameleon. But mostly she's not painting things. So here's a whole section of illustrations that are figurative, but mostly the work is abstract with no, it's non-figurative. And it's quite interesting and engaging, in my opinion. So when we look at, I think I want to go to this one too. Oh, here's another little profile from another art page. And she's just talking about color being her guiding principle. And she's self-taught. And this part I actually thought was awesome. It has long been my ambition to discover a new color that nobody has ever seen before. That's just adorable. Okay, so I want to go to, I have a part of the artwork choice for the week would be to do an artwork inspired by her style. So I want to go to the this. Okay, so like I said, largely abstract, but sometimes does some figurative things. Like there's a self-portrait, there's a landscape, which actually looks pretty good. Here is that intuitive style, the more stained glass confined style. But remember what I said, she definitely has this idea of using tints and shades to bring areas forward and back. And also using contrast or lack of to make areas fight or blend. So let's focus first on these two on the bottom, the blue and green one, and then the one that is primarily warm colors. Okay, so both of those on the bottom, those are mostly made up of neighbor or analogous, which is the technical term, colors that are getting along and look great together. Do you see how that's the case? Like in the one in the left, the blue and the green and a little bit of yellow, those feel like they're harmonizing together. Those are colors that look like they belong. Now look at this one right here. This also is true, but where do you feel like the focal point is in this artwork? Where is the focal point intended to be? Where are we drawn to settle? Anybody have an idea?
Is it the main square in the middle?
Which one?
The square in the middle.
What color?
It
Can you
just
tell me?
sticks out to me. It's like dark pinkish, and has like the orange square inside it.
Yeah. Now, did you mean the entire big dark square or just that little pink square?
Just the little pink square in the middle.
That's a great choice. And now, how do you, how, like, how on the thank you, Grayson, on the, when I ask on those, the reflection sort of self-eval sheets, I'm always like, what's your focal point and how did you support it? How do you feel like that is supported as a focal point?
It kind of sticks out amongst the rest. I feel like if this were on like a bunch of layers, really, and we could see the layers, I feel like that one like line for that square would be on top of all the others.
Yeah. Now, how do you,
Plus, it's in the middle, so
okay, so it's position. If I say to you, how did you support it? It's position in the painting, number one. How about what the stuff we were talking about today? Color or tints and shape, or color or value? How do you think those two are coming into play here?
well, again, it's darker on the other parts, but right in the middle, the orange makes it bright and makes it stick out more. Plus, all the corners are pretty light colors.
Yeah. So she's definitely using that light values come forward, dark values behind those light ones recede and give it like a deep background. Absolutely. So most parts of this are that harmonious blending, but look at what she does pretty sort of deliberately in a couple areas. In a couple areas, some things are popping out and right near them are basically complements. So do you see the yellow like L looking thing? Right near
Yeah.
that, oops, what did I do? Right near the yellow L is that dark purple. And there's some blues kind of hanging out, like near the bottom. There's some blue near the orange. And same thing on the left-hand side. So she very kind of carefully is placing some blue and purple to sort of beef up the lighter areas that she wants to emerge. So one of the things that I want you guys, oh, let's talk about this one first. Now, what about this one? Because this one is very different. This one does not have that feeling of, oh, all these colors just go together so nicely. Because it does, but then it doesn't, right? Like I can identify purple, dark red, orange, pink. Those are kind of neighbors. So is orange, yellow, red. Those are neighbors. So is purple and blue, and I guess pink. But like they're taking from all kinds, right? Or like all sides. But then when you're putting them all together, that's, especially in the combinations she has, it doesn't feel like neighbor combinations. So what's emerging as the focal point here? Anybody else want to take a stab at that? Anybody's eyes drawn to that big bright yellow spot in the middle?
Yeah.
Yeah. This one, not so much by color is it really, really, really our focal point, but definitely by value. It's got like the darkest value right around that light bright spot. My favorite part of the whole thing is in the lower left-hand corner, where it's got that beautiful, cute little loop, and it's orange inside, surrounded by its complement, which is blue. So she's got a lot going on in these things, a lot. They're really quite clever. And the biggest takeaway that I want you to have is that while they feel like really kind of free and random, and probably to some degree, I think you could argue that some of them probably are, I don't know about random, but there's a lot of kind of freedom to them. They are not thoughtless. Okay. There's a lot of choice being made to how you can bring colors forward, send them back, where the focal point is, how you support it, what type of shapes and lines, where colors are, what they're surrounded by. And that's not meant to make you be like, why can't I just throw a bunch of colors down if that's what it is? It's exciting. It's exciting how you can control parts of an artwork just with color. I think that that should be exciting. Okay, anybody have any questions about what we were just looking at with Amanda Hone and abstract painting and color? Okay. All right. Well, then what I would like to do now is go back to the choice board and go over the classwork. I have a couple things that I want to show you. First, actually, before I do that, I did want to point out that tomorrow morning during the morning short class, I'm going to be going over the artworks for this week. So you want to make sure you don't miss that, because some people really only come to class the first 2 days of the week, and I want to make sure that you are coming. I'm also going to be doing demos the rest of the week on Thursday and Friday for those artworks. Things like how to use the ruler to make straight lines, which would be really important this week. So just a heads up on that. But tomorrow, you're going to be I'm going to be doing the artwork demonstration in the morning. Okay, so couple things to show you for the classwork, which is due today. First thing is the color wheel. This demonstration that I'm going to do right now is also in that video, so you could watch that if you wanted later again. But what I basically want to show you is how to get started so that you can go ahead and use a couple different methods to neatly work on filling in parts of your resource, okay? Because remember, you should not be making your own for this, okay? It's a little too complicated for that. All right, I forgot to clear these, it's okay. All right, so I use Photoshop for my color wheel because I do not like the way that Fresco's selection tools work. It's just my personal preference. So it's up to you. I found that the brushes and the colors worked fine for me in Photoshop. So that's what I chose to use, but you can use Fresco if you would like to. Okay, so first thing I want to remind you of, I'm on the very top layer, which is the resource, the color wheel resource. And right now it is set to multiply, and that's what you're going to want to do. If it is set to normal, then you can't see anything below that layer, okay? When you set a layer to multiply, basically everything that is white becomes see-through. So that's what we want. It keeps the black line art layer essentially, and everything below it becomes visible. So I'm going to work on this layer right here, which is the blue-green layer, and show you my method for getting in there and getting it neatly done. So first thing I'm going to do, and there's two ways you can do this. I'm going to make selections to create a good workspace for me to paint in, okay? You can go to your line art layer. Notice my line art layer has no paint on it because you do not paint on your photo or resource layer. But you can go to that layer, you can pick up your quick selection tool, and then literally just 2 seconds of movement, and you've selected that space, okay? Now I'm going to go to my blue-green layer because that's where the paint happens. I'm going to use my eyedropper tool, pick up the hue because I did the hues first, and now I'm doing the tints and shades. Got my paintbrush again. And now to keep it consistent, because this is one of the issues you could face, you shouldn't have like a different level of tint or shade for each color. You should keep them similar and matching. So I made like a conscious decision to put my little circle sampler about a third of the way in for the tint and a third of the way from the bottom for my shade. So I wouldn't just like now decide, oh, this is going to be my tint. And then I get the paint bucket and I go like that. You see how different that is? It just doesn't fit. So here I go again. I'm going to pick that. Pardon me. So there's about a third of the way because I want it to match my other tints. And I did that, and now I deselect. Okay, so now I'm going to do the shade, but I'm going to show you the other way you can do it. This is not going to look pretty. I'm just going to warn you because this is not like a good setup for me to work, but I'm going to do my best. So you don't have to make your selection on the top layer on your resource. You can make your selection right on your painting layer. You're going to want to switch tools because you can't select with that tool on a blank layer. So you could get something like the lasso, and then you could just draw. But you have to draw well. So I'm outlining. Oh, this went a lot better this time. The one I drew first period was horrible. Okay, so I've drawn that. Went pretty well. Now I'm going to switch to my eyedropper and pick up that blue. And now I'm going to pick a shade. So remember, you don't want to like do something wacko. You want to keep it consistent. I check and make sure I'm on the right layer because I've done that too many times in my life. And now I'm getting the eyedropper and I'm filling it in. Okay, so that's how you could use selections to very carefully and wonderfully fill up your slices. Okay, so just a couple things to note. If you don't have the line art at the top, it's going to look crummy. So keep that in mind. You also might be thinking, I don't want to make selections. I just want to paint it. Why are you making it so difficult? That's totally fine. You know, you're allowed to do that. You would then just, oh, look, it knew exactly what I wanted. So I'm picking it up this. I'm switching to a brush. I'm going to make it a tint. And then I'm going to paint. The only thing about this is you have to be neat. So if you're all of a sudden just like doing that, that's not going to work. Okay, so make sure you're being neat. That's why I choose to use selections, because just that little bit of extra work makes it so that I don't have to be careful. Okay, any questions on the color wheel? That's one of your options for classwork. And if you need to see that demonstration again, it is in your, oh, it's right there, and it's right there. Okay, that was the first option for classwork, and I wanted to give you that extra information. Here is the other option for color for classwork this week, which is the shape, the op art shape. So showing this one I would do in fresco. Here is my demonstration from first period. I'll just start it again. Okay, so here, what you're going to start with first is a nice drawing, filling the space. So let's see, I'll just make a, oops. I said that first period too. I always think it's going to be on the brush I want, and it never is. All right, so I'll make a heart again. Wow, that's fat brush. Okay, so one of the good things about having, like, a lot of times my feedback to you guys is, please make separate layers, you know? I want to show you why that's so important. So first you are drawing your shape. Oh, wait, I'm going to brush again. And then you're going to start drawing lines across the background. These lines should pretty much go edge to edge. They should, you should try different things. Don't be afraid. So like maybe the first thing I'll do is just, I don't know, this is kind of like a rainbow. That's cute. This is about my 15th one of these. So I'm kind of running out of ideas, but we'll see what happens. Okay, and I think I'm gonna want lines going the other way. Now I'm gonna make these lines, oops, bigger, because remember what I said about not getting overly complicated. This is going to make a ton of shapes. So don't get overly complicated. Now, one of the things that you could do, because this is on a separate layer, is move your heart to line it up with stuff, shrink it or enlarge it. Like I kind of like that there better, kind of ending at certain points. That's way better. If you had everything on the same layer, you would not be able to do that. So it's important. I'm also going to move my heart to the top layer. Okay, now I'm going to try another idea. I'm going to turn this one off. This time, let's see. Oops, sorry. So remember, this is like a exercise piece. So it's not your best, but it's also not garbage. This is horrible. I hate this design. That's okay. I think I need to make my brush smaller. Hey, you see how I got over that? I was like, that's ugly and it's okay. Keep making that same mistake. I need to make another. But this is what, generating ideas is about. So it's okay. Some of you may have seen, I did something like this. You can do this thing where when it hits your shape, you can alter what it's doing. That's a pretty common op art sort of deal. And then again, keep it simple. I'm not sure what I would do here. Sure, why not? Okay. All right, let's use that one. So now I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to move my line layer up above it. So now what you're going to do, I switched to like a dark gray because I wanted to be able to tell it from the black. And now you're just going to very simply mark the ones that you would be coloring in because it's every other. And start with your subject, your focal point, and just do, oops, too much. Okay, just do like every other. Just make a mark. Oh, not that one. See how it can get confusing? This is a pretty confusing shape, to be honest. And then there. Okay, see, I'm already going to have problems. This is why it's practice, but that's okay. So you would go ahead and do all the every other. Yeah, this one's going to have a lot of issues. Then you would go in and you would start filling it in solid. You don't probably need selections with this one because the lines are a lot bigger and stuff than that little teeny tiny copier, or the worksheet paper was. So you can see this one is having issues. And if I was going to make this into like my real finished piece, I would need to spend a lot more time making it adaptable to that every other kind of checkerboard idea. But I would do that. Now you might be thinking, hey, this doesn't look at all like Bridget Riley. She had all these straight lines and stuff like that. But there were a lot of op artists, and this is, like I said, this is a warm up. This is thinking about how you can use value to go forward and back, how you can manipulate the space to show depth and the illusion of space. If you are interested in the op art style, this is a good one for you to do, just to be thinking about all of those things, illusion of space and so on. But when we get to the chance to pick for your artwork, there are other options taking it further into the op art style. So you won't necessarily be making something that looks exactly like this, obviously, for your artwork. So if you're interested in it, definitely pursue that classwork if you want to, because it's one step along the road. It's an exercise. Okay, does anybody have any questions? I hope that was helpful, showing how to do it. And really, seriously, don't get too complicated. Oh, what was I doing? That's not supposed to be colored in. And I also want to show you how different it looks when you have the shading on top. You see how crummy that looks? That's why it's really important to keep your line art on top. Yeah, there. Okay, anybody have any questions about anything?